The rally today is protesting the legislation introduced by the federal government that will allow hate speech and discrimination against LGBTI people and many other Australians in the name of so-called religious freedom.
And which came out this week to basically further discriminate. There's already exemptions that allow religious groups and organisations to discriminate, but these bills go even further, allowing individuals, including health professionals, to be allowed to discriminate based on their religious views.
I think the main fear is that it will allow more discrimination. It will allow some discrimination that is currently not permitted to take place in workplaces, in schools, hospitals and other care places, as well as in the community more broadly.
We have now seen the bills, we saw them yesterday, and they confirm the worst fears that we had about what they might contain. These bills basically give a green light to homophobia and transphobia and biphobia, not just to individuals, but for institutions to discriminate on the grounds of so-called religious freedom.
At the moment in most Australian states, religious schools can already fire LGBTI teachers and expel LGBTI students. That's already the law in all of the mainland states. Only Tasmania prohibits that. What the new legislation at a federal level will do will actually expand those exemptions so that religious hospitals, for instance, can refuse to provide their health services to anyone they feel doesn't conform to their religious views. So not only LGBTI people, but a woman who is using contraception may not be able to access health services in a Catholic hospital. Gay men who are looking for prescriptions for PrEP may not be able to get those from a doctor who feels they can't dispense them because they're Catholic. This really does punch a huge hole in our healthcare system and imports an American culture war about so-called religious freedom into Australian hospitals.
But I think that one of the major concerning things is that they got a lot of their ideas from the bills that went through in America. So they got the ideas from Trump's recent legislation. So it's really concerning. Australia's already looking like it's getting more and more conservative. Even today we saw the police being a bit more full on than they normally have. We thought, many people thought things were getting better in that regard, but it really showed that we've got a lot further to go and we're going down a very similar path to America, which is a major concern, which is why we want people to keep coming out and fighting on the streets.
It will allow hate speech in the workplace. It is currently not allowed. It will allow discrimination in healthcare and in hospitals that is currently not allowed. It will put the health of women at risk. It will put people with disabilities at risk. It will put religious and racial minorities at risk of hate and discrimination in just the same way it puts LGBTIQ people at risk.
And one of the big concerns is that it explicitly overrides current state legislations which have a much broader view of anti-discrimination than the Commonwealth appears to be wanting.
This bill expands the rights of workers and also employees to say whatever hateful thing they want in the workplace, regardless of the workplace standards that apply, regardless of the inclusion policies or of the protections that workers currently have from that kind of harassment. Basically, this bill that's been introduced in Canberra is a licence to hate and discriminate. It rolls back the culture of inclusion that Australians have worked so hard to create over the last 50 years.
If even though it doesn't specify Christian, that's really what they're about. And if they made it in such a way that it was clearly referring to Islamic freedom, on one side, that'd be great. But the people who are most pushing it and wanting it are not really that interested, I don't think, in Islamic freedom.
Muslim people are some of the most discriminated people in Australia, and when you read all the bills, you don't see one mention of Muslims. Like it's clearly for the Christian conservatives who were really upset that we won marriage equality and they lost, and they instead of like going away with their tail behind their legs or whatever dogs do, they have come back to try to make some gains, and we're not going to take it.
There have been several polls over the last 12 months which have shown a very consistent figure. About 65% of Australians don't believe there should be discrimination in the name of religion, in the workplace or in healthcare or wherever it might be. They say no to discrimination, even if it's in the name of religious freedom.
In some cases it will be impossible. Obviously there'll still be there's many individuals that will oppose these laws, and even despite having religious values, hopefully there'll still be many people that have a conscience that will still treat people with respect. And
it's very difficult to know. I mean, the circles I move in don't support this law at all. And the people, my own networks, but then perhaps I live in a bubble. As we found with the marriage equality law, it turned out that not only in the actual vote, but in the polls leading up to it, where people of faith were specifically asked, there was a majority of support from people of faith for the change in law.
So only a small minority of Australians actually support what the federal government is doing. It is acting at the behest of a very small group of aggrieved bishops and pastors and priests who feel, I think, that their power and privilege in Australian society is somehow slipping away, and they want it enshrined in law before it goes altogether. They do not want to be governed by the same laws as everyone else. They want special rights, special exemptions, special treatment to allow them to indulge their hatefulness.
I guess the thing we'd want to say is, your rights to your belief are not being attacked, are not being taken away. We're not looking at clamping down. There's no evidence of any certainly anti-Christian religious discrimination in our country. There may be discrimination against people of other religions, which, if we had a proper anti-discrimination act in place relating to religious belief, would be a great thing. But this doesn't seem to be addressing those issues at all.
we saw a decent number of people come out today, but we really want to see more and more numbers out on the streets to fight this. And as we've seen in the last week, it's not only going to affect LGBTI people, it's going to affect people across the spectrum. So we really need as many people to come out and take a stand.